Hello, it's Sandy Cogdill with Sandy Cogdill Designs, and today I have another card for you from the new Trinity Stamps release. This one is from the stamp and die collection called Your Stellar, and I just love the little Martians on this in that stamp set. For this card, I decided I would use my Copic airbrush system for the background. I love the way my cards turn out when I use that. Go ahead and subscribe if you want to be notified of future videos. You can also follow me on Instagram at Sandy Cogdill or on my blog, www.sandykogdilldesigns.com. Let's get started. I'm going to start out with a piece of cardstock cut at 6x6. I'm going to use the new Crater Layers Stencil and die set to help me create my moon surface. So I'm going to lay my stencil down on my cardstock, and then I'm going to tape it down so it doesn't move. And then I'm going to cover the little craters and the other little stencil pieces up above so that when I spray my Copic marker, it doesn't get into those areas. I just want that to be a nice, clean area. I'm not too worried about the area below where the stencil ends because I'm going to be cutting that out with the die cut that goes with that set. So I'm going to start using Copic number Y008, and I'm just going to airbrush a nice layer in that opening from the stencil. I'm not trying to make it a solid surface because I want it to have a little bit of variations in colors. Now that I've got that painted the way I want it, I'm going to remove that stencil, and I'm going to use the part of the stencil that has some little craters in it, some little crevasses, I think is how you say it. And then I'm going to spray that with a Y35 Copic marker. This is a great little stencil because I know you can't really see it on the camera, but it does have little embossed lines that help you line up where that's going to give you the best coloring. I'm going to protect the cardstock up above that stencil with just a piece of scrap cardstock, and then I'm going to come in with my airbrush and I'm going to spray over that stencil. Again, I'm not worried about getting an even color. I want the variations of the different colors in those little craters and crevices. Now that I have my moon surface done, I need to make a mask so that I can protect that area that I just airbrushed and then start ink blending or spraying my colors in up above to create my nighttime sky. So I'm going to use the die that comes with that set and just clip off a little piece of paper to make that mask. Now that I have my mask cut, I'm going to just use a little bit of it, low-tack adhesive tape, line it up where my little moon surface is, and then just temporarily tape it to that side so that it stays in place as I go to use my airbrush system. One thing about the airbrush is it does blow quite a bit of air, so you really do need to try to make sure your little masks are adhered fairly well so that you don't get paint blowing up underneath that stencil. I want to include the comet in my background, so I'm going to just kind of fiddle around with the die that I'm going to use to cut out my background. And then I also have a scrap Martian or flying saucer and the little ray beams that I'm going to use to kind of help me figure out where I want to place the stencil so that I can start spraying that comet in. Now that I've got my stencil placed where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and use some low-tack tape, stick that stencil down, and then I want to cover up any opening that's still in that stencil where some of the ink might get onto my white cardstock. So I use paper on the bottom, and then on the top I'm just going to also use the low-tack tape to cover up that little earth shape, and then the two little stencils that add detail to that earth. Now I'm going to start spraying my meteor with YR07, and then to add just a little bit more excitement or dimension to it, I'm going to add RV19 to the flames on the back left-hand side. I'm sorry, the right side, and then a little bit around the front of the meteor. Now I have to create a mask for my meteor. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spray that shape from the stencil on a piece of Post-it note. Once I get that sprayed, I'm going to go ahead and just cut that out and then apply it to the meteor that I've got sprayed onto my cardstock background. Now that I've got my ugly little meteor mask on, I can go ahead and start spraying my background. I'm going to start with V05. And I'm just going to kind of go around the cardstock. Again, I'm not trying to get a solid coat anywhere on this card. I just want a nice variation of colors, the depth of the colors. So I'm going to start with V05, and then I'm going to move into a V09. And then once I get done with that, I'm going to take B69 and add that to my card, but I'm going to kind of try to keep that color along the outside edges because I want those nice violet colors to really shine through in the center of the card. Now it's time for the big reveal. This is my favorite part when I'm doing airbrushing or ink blending with masks. I'm going to go ahead and peel off that bottom mask and look at that moon surface against the sky. And then I'm going to peel off the mask that I have over my meteor. There's going to be a little bit of white where the two inks, well, just where the mask was covering it up. The beauty about using Copic markers is I can go back in with my marker and just touch up those white edges and just add a little bit more definition to that meteor if I feel like it needs it. That's one of my favorite things about using the airbrush system is that you can go back in with the pretty much the exact color and just clean up those edges and make them a little bit sharper. Again, I'm going to use my scrap flying saucer and the little beam to help me place where I want to use my die to cut out the background. I am cutting this to 4 by 5 1/4. All the colors on this background are so vibrant that I wanted to make sure that the area where my sentiment was going to be was also very vibrant. So I used just plain old white cardstock and I airbrushed it with YG06. I'm using the sentiment from the die set to stamp on that, and then I will heat emboss it with some black embossing powder. I'm going to use the coordinating dies from this stamp set to bubble cut the sentiment. I love how Trinity Stamps usually has those bubble cut dies. I just like the way that turns out. And now it's time for the fun part, putting everything together. I'm going to glue the sentiment pieces directly to the background of the card. Again, I am a liquid glue girl, and I very rarely use the adhesive tape. I just don't find that for the long haul it sticks that well. So I'm going to glue those sentiments to the background. And then I'm going to kind of play around with where I want my little flying saucers to be. Again, I'm going to use that scrap piece for the rays. I guess that's what they're called. I'm not sure. Just to figure out where I want that center one. And then I'm going to put a little bit, well, I'm going to put thin foam on the back of each one of those flying saucers, including the beam, just to pop them up from the surface of that card. I do like to have a little bit of dimension on most of my cards. I just think it just adds just a little bit extra. And as my friend Carrie always says, the love is in the details. The die set for the Crater Layers Stencil has a die in it that cuts out a bunch of different size and shaped stars. So I used that to cut out some silver glitter cardstock, and I'm just going to fill in that background now with some little stars just to give a little bit added interest in the card. And that is pretty much going to do it for this card. I will put it on a yellow piece of cardstock cut at 5.5 by 4.25, just to give it a little bit of a border and kind of tie all of those colors together. Thank you so much for stopping by today. I hope you've enjoyed following along with the process on this card. You can go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel just by clicking that button below. You can also follow me on Instagram at Sandy Cogdell or on my blog, sandycogdelldesigns.com. Thanks again, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.